Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket podcast. We're joined this week by another one of the great contributors of the Blazing Musket, Ben Clements. Ben covered USL League 2 all across New England this summer for us. Did a great job of providing coverage of a league that doesn't get too much attention, of course, outside the mighty Vermont Green. Ben also did some play-by-play for the Boston Bolts, which is another team that features in USL League 2. And he's here today to talk about the great League 2 season that just wrapped up and his own young, burning career as a soccer journalist. He's headed off to Syracuse in the fall next weekend. So he was able to jump on with us this week. And, of course, anytime we have somebody from the Blazing Musket able to come on the show, it is a welcome appearance, even when it's even if it's Sam Minton. So, Ben, really appreciate you coming on the show. I really enjoyed your work covering a league that doesn't get a lot of coverage. So, how are you feeling as this summer of soccer starts to wrap up and you get ready to go to college for the first time?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Thomas. Really appreciate the opportunity. I had a great summer covering USL 2. I did play-by-play, like you mentioned, for the Boston Bolts. I was at every one of their home games, and I was their lead play-by-play guy. So that was a lot of fun. I got to see some really good, high-quality soccer on display at Brandeis University, where they play their home games. I also ended up covering the league, like you mentioned. So I went to some games. I went to NEFC in Worcester, covered a few of their games there. Also went down to Lusitano Stadium to cover Western Mass Pioneers playoff game. So, overall, I got to see a lot of good action in the USL 2 this summer. And obviously, I followed the run of Vermont Green. I watched every one of their playoff games, So there was a lot of really good soccer on display this summer. And I felt privileged that I got to cover a lot of it, not only on the air as a play-by-play guy, but writing for the Blazing Musket. That was an awesome opportunity. And I really got a chance to dive into a league that, like you say, not a lot of people know about, but it's a really good soccer. This is some top Division 1 talent. And I do feel like it deserves a little bit more attention than it's getting today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I every time that we've gone to one, we go to like two, maybe three Vermont Green games a year. Yeah, I mean the standard of play it's enjoyable to watch. It's a good style, and if you look at college soccer maybe 5 years ago for sure, 10 years ago, it's come a long way as kind of all lower division soccer. But yeah, I mean it's enjoyable, it's cheap, and Vermont Green aside, it's not too hard to just kind of rock up on the day and like you said, get to watch some good high level soccer. So how does one get into play by play broadcasting for a USL League 2 team? Just a couple weeks after graduating from high school.
Yeah, of course. So I actually got into play-by-play when I was a sophomore in high school. When I came into high school, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I learned in my freshman year that I was a pretty good writer. I like to tell stories. I could do it on paper, and then eventually I figured out that I could do that verbally. I'm a pretty good communicator. So then in my sophomore year of high school, I ended up taking a sports broadcasting class at my high school, and that's kind of where I found my love for not only play-by-play but everything sports media. It was the class that you couldn't wait to get to in your schedule. Is the one that was waiting every day, and I got to do a lot of cool stuff in that class, and that's what really introduced me to the realm of sports media. So at the end of that class, I asked my teacher. I was like, I'm really interested in broadcasting some of these games, doing play-by-play. Is that a possibility? And he was like, yeah, sure. We have no one doing that. Feel free. So I hopped on and I started with soccer. That was the first sport that I did play-by-play for, the one that I'm most familiar with. Of course, I've played soccer my whole life, so I do know a lot about the sport. So that's how I started. I did play-by-play for soccer, and then eventually, as I grew on in my high school career, I covered all the sports pretty much at my high school: football, hockey, lacrosse, including soccer. So yeah, that's kind of how my high school experience went. I had 3 years of doing that. Kind of got a little bit more intense every year. This past year was a really good year for me. I got to do some really good hockey and basketball games at my school, and I feel like this is the year where I kind of discovered, I'm going to college next year, so I have to figure out what I want to do. I figured out I really have a passion for this. This is something I want to do, not just for fun, but something I really want to pursue. So once the seasons ended for hockey and basketball, I didn't really have any games to call at my high school. I'm not a huge lacrosse guy, so that one didn't end up really working out for me. So, but I knew I wanted to stay involved in play-by-play as I go on, especially as I go on to Syracuse next year, where I'm going to hope to be involved with something like this. So I was looking for opportunities this summer to be active in the play-by-play space. And I actually played for Boston Bolts, not the top team, but I played soccer my whole life, like I mentioned. And this year I joined Boston Bolts to play on a local, just a U19 Central team. And so I had a connection there. So I just reached out to the face of the club. I saw they were going to have a season, USL 2 season. I was like, I'm sure these games are going to be broadcast. They need someone to do their games, and why not reach out? It doesn't hurt to reach out and see if something can come from this. So sure enough, I reached out and they were nice enough to get right back to me, and they said, this is something we're looking for. This is something we definitely would be interested in you doing this summer. And they kind of just brought me right on. From then on, I was at the games starting in May, and I was able to do play-by-play coverage for all their home games. And like I mentioned, it was a really great experience. My first chance to do play-by-play for something outside of my school.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's it. It I think that's probably a good lesson to learn. I mean, at any age, really. I mean, I only ended up here on the Blazing Musket because I same thing. I just kind of blindly sent Sam a message and was like, "Hey, I know soccer pretty well. This coaching thing is giving me an ulcer. I can write, so what do you think?" And they gave me a shot, and yeah, it worked out really really well. So it's always interesting, like we were talking about before we started recording. Like when we reach out to people to come on the show, the worst thing they can do is say no, or they ignore the DM, and okay, fine, no problem. We'll move on and find somebody else. Let me ask you this: aside from soccer, all the other sports that you did, which one did you find to be the most difficult? My guess would be hockey, because when I watch hockey, have essentially no idea what is going on, where the puck is, what the line change, like just total no idea what's going on.
Well, it's a great question, and it's funny you bring up hockey because coming into this year, and I've watched all sports throughout my whole life, but hockey is definitely the one I knew the least about. But I wanted another, like, more chances to do play by play. I'm like, you know what? Let me learn the game. Let me jump into play by play. And surprisingly, I actually picked it up pretty quickly. I had a color commentator with me for hockey, so that helped. I myself, as a play by play broadcaster, I find it easier to call games that are moving fast. I don't know why, but the words kind of just flow out of my mouth. And hockey moves so fast. It's end to end real quick. There's no filler time except when the whistle blows. So I actually had a blast doing hockey this year. It was a lot of fun. And I really learned to do that quick play style. And I've learned the game a little bit. There's still things that I don't know about hockey, of course, but I figured it out pretty quickly. I would say, to answer your question, the one that I found the most difficult, maybe surprisingly, it's probably football, because when I did football at my high school, I didn't have a color commentator with me. So for those of you who don't know, also play-by-play is obviously the one who describes the action, and then a color commentator is someone who breaks it down, gives the analysis, like a Tony Romo if you watch NFL. So I didn't have someone with me to do that in the booth for high school games. So the trouble with football is a play happens and then there's 20 to 30 seconds of filler
Oh,
time before the next snap. So you got to figure out stuff to say. So that's when you really got to do your research, hammer home the stats that you grinded down on your board. But it is tough to sometimes find stuff to say in that filler time. You figure it out as you go on. But it's especially tough when the football team at my high school that I did the games for, we're a really good program. So we're winning a bunch of games like 30, 40 nothing at home. And at a certain point, there's like, okay, there's only so much I can really talk about. So that's why I would say football was probably the most difficult for me. But every sport has its unique challenges.
yeah, sure. So I'd imagine that baseball is probably not one that you'd be really gunning to get a chance to do. Nine
Yeah, I've
nine
never
innings,
actually had
three
the chance.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I would be open to, but I've never have had the chance to do baseball.
yeah, yeah. I think baseball is just games are so long. Like you said, by the time the
Yeah.
same guy comes up to the plate four times, it's like, well, what am I gonna, what is there to say? Uh,
Right.
so when you did the soccer games for Boston Bolts, did you have, did you have a colored person with you, or was it just you by yourself? And like what, like, I mean, you kind of alluded to it already, but like, what, how much prep work if you're doing the game by yourself versus doing the game with an analyst? how much prep work do you have to put into, getting ready for, let's say Boston Bolts, a team that you're somewhat familiar with, but you're playing your Western Mass Pioneers for the first time this season, and you don't know anything about them. Like, what do you have to do to get ready for that type of a game?
Yeah, for sure. So I was the sole play-by-play guy at the Bolts. I didn't have a color commentator with me. So that means that I did have to do all the prep myself, and I would say I definitely did a good amount of preparation before every game. The way that I did it is the morning of the game or sometimes the night before, I'd log on to the USL League 2 website and I'd start with the opposition, the team who was coming to play us, just kind of dive into, start with basics. Who's their leading goal scorer? Who's their goalie who's typically starting every game? Do they have any standout players and assists, anything like that? Anybody who really succeeded at college? And, I'm documenting all this stuff, just writing it down. And then the next day, once the lineups are out unofficially for the Bolts, I would always get there 11. So I'd always hammer home maybe an hour or so, sometimes more than that, prep on just the starting 11 for the Bolts. So, I'm researching, and it's more so at the beginning of the season when you don't know the players.
Mm-hmm.
It changes once I see these guys playing every game. But at the beginning of the season, it's a lot of work to really, find out where these guys played in college. Not only that, but storylines from their time in college, if they've played in USL2 before. Because, that's what makes a good broadcast. It's not just calling the game and, saying, oh, he passes it to him, the ball goes there. It's about the story, right? So you want to tell a story when you're on the air, and in order to do that, you got to do a fair amount of research, specifically with the college guys, so they all have different backgrounds. And if you piece it together correctly, you can make a really good story out of some of these guys. I had a lot of good chances to do that with the Bolts. There's a lot of guys I could go into that just had really fun backlines, and you kind of jump into that in the game, and then they score and it's a story. And yeah, so it's a lot of preparation, but that's stuff that I love doing that. I'm happy to sit down and take a few hours to just grind home some stats and storylines from their past.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of have to, right? Because, like you said, otherwise you've got an hour and a half to fill, and if they're making subs, if it's a free kick, if a guy's getting treatment, all of a sudden, okay, you're the play-by-play guy, but if there is no play for 30, 35, 40 seconds, you've got to try and you got to try and fill that time. Now, what about, like, because I feel like some announcers, they get very, very excited for what turns out to be a pretty, like, mundane occurrence in the game. Like, there's a particular guy on Apple radio, on Apple TV. Guy winds up for a shot from, like, 32, 35 yards out, and it, like, falls softly into the chest of the goalkeeper. But his initial reaction is as if this guy has just hit, like, a rocket that is, like, destined for the top corner. So, like, how do you in that moment decide how much emphasis am I going to put behind what I th- I think something's about to happen, but I could be totally wrong, and this shot could go 20 yards over the crossbar.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my pet peeves of broadcasting is when people get too loud or too excited about a moment that really comes up to nothing. It's all about keeping it in the moment and, keeping your cool. That's really important when you're calling a game. You kind of just got to read the game. It's a hard thing to explain to someone who's not there doing it. Um, you know, I don't know. It's when a shot happens, you got to read, where the shot's coming in from. You got to read how good of a chance is it. Like if it's a grade A chance he's in on goal, well then we know, all right, he's either gonna put it into the back of net and they're gonna score, or the goalie's gonna make a good save. That's a time that you can kind of get excited. If it's a cross coming into the box from, the wing, okay, this could be a goal, but we don't need to scream and shout and say, "Oh, here comes the cross." We don't have to do that unless it's like a key moment in the game. It's all part of reading the game, which is a big part of play-by-play broadcasting. And I'm not saying it's easy. Reading the game is very difficult, and it's something that takes a while. But I will say, you never want to really lose control. You always got to think about this is for the viewers at home. And, if you're going crazy, if you're screaming, that's not enjoyable for the people who are trying to listen and enjoy the game at home. It's all about their experience, and you want to comfort it to their liking, I would say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, there's so many games where sometimes the analysts too, which I feel like sometimes the analysts like okay, like we get it, like there's a lot of stuff that you want to talk about, but like I'm actually trying to carry on a conversation as well with the person who's sat next to me, so maybe you could back it off a little bit. Like one of my favorite things is sometimes I'll just put on, I'll put the Spanish broadcast on, just so I don't really. There's no chance that I'm going to understand anything they're saying, and I can just kind of block it out. So it's encouraging to hear that you're like self-aware that this is it's about the game and the people watching the game, and I'm just kind of the conduit here to keep everybody kind of up to date with with what's going on. Because you definitely lose that experience when you go to some of those games, right, if you go to a USL League Two game, if I turn up at a Bolts game, and they're playing Seacoast, I don't know anything about anybody. I'm vaguely aware of where the two teams come from and which team is who, but other than that, I don't know who this guy. So if you want to keep up with it when you're at the game, you're scrolling through your phone, like looking up where this guy goes to college and where that guy goes to college. So yeah, I mean it's pretty challenging. I'll tell you this: I really enjoy podcasting. I really enjoy writing. I don't think I've ever really seriously contemplated. I think I'm gonna try play by play. I think I'm gonna try describing this sport for an hour and a half. Like it's I could talk for an hour and a half, but I don't think I could play by play for an hour and a half is certainly a challenge. So you're going to Syracuse now. Again, I don't know much about Syracuse other than they used to be in the Big East and now they're not. And back when Boston College had a reputable basketball program, they had a pretty good rivalry with Syracuse. That is the extent of my Syracuse knowledge. I'm assuming that you've not headed up there for the basketball team. So can you tell us, what ultimately had you settle on Syracuse?
Yeah, of course. So, when I began my college search, I was really looking for a school that catered to what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to do was broadcast journalism for sure, and specifically relating to sports. So, when I was doing my research, one school significantly stood above the others, and that was definitely Syracuse. So at Syracuse, what I was accepted into is the Newhouse School of Public Communications, and it's essentially a nationally recognized school in terms of media, broadcast journalism, communications, all that kind of thing. They have a really good reputation. Part of what makes their reputation so good is the studio media or the student media outlets on campus. So they have a lot of television programs. Citrus TV is their big one, where they run sports, they run game shows, they run news, that kind of a thing. They also have two big radio stations. One is an NPR affiliate. In terms of sports, they call games on that NPR affiliate. They call men's football, basketball. They also have sports talk shows, that kind of a thing. And then the other radio station, they also have sports. It's a different kind of sports. They have women's basketball, high school games of the week, that kind of thing. So a lot of opportunities for you to get involved on campus. There's also on the writing side, the Daily Orange. You can newspaper editorial style like that, report on sports, of course. In terms of sports, in general, sports journalism at the school, the alumni network is very strong. So myself being a play-by-play broadcaster, when I'm looking up, this is something I'm interested in the future. What's a good school for this? You see an alumni list of people like Mike Tirico, Marv Albert, Bob Costas, Ian Eagle, Noah Eagle, just a few names to drop a few, who are now professional play-by-play broadcasters, national names, who you turn on your TV Tuesday night, you're going to see one of these guys. They all went to Syracuse. What I've heard from a lot of people who also went to Newhouse is later on in life, when you're working a job in this industry, you'll meet people and you'll find out they also went to Syracuse. They produce so many people in this industry. The alumni network is really strong, and they're always willing to come back and help students at Syracuse. So it's really a very powerful school in terms of what I want to do. There's really, in my eyes, no school like it. And when it's a 4-hour drive from my house, I can come home for holidays. I went to the campus. The campus is awesome. All those factors, I figured pretty quickly it was the right school for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew Carterson there as well, right? The Celtics play-by-play
He
guy.
is.
Yeah, yeah,
He is.
yeah, yeah. Like we were talking about before. I mean, I grew up with Mike and Tommy. Those guys. They have to get through a lot of bad Celtics seasons in the late '90s, early 2000s. But they were great. But yeah, Drew and Scal, I think they've kind of picked up where Mike and Tommy left off. So yeah, so I've really enjoyed Drew Carter the last couple of years with the Celtics. Now, so what is the now we know where the men's soccer national champions reside currently, up in UVM. But is the Syracuse soccer program, is that something that you're interested in following while you're up there, and kind of where are they at as a national program?
Yeah, of course. So I'm definitely very interested in following them. They're actually national champions dating a few years back. And shame on me, I can't remember the year, but I want to say it was 2022. I was actually there, funny enough, for a soccer tournament. I saw them play in the College Cup final. But yeah, it's a historic program, the men's side. They've had a fall off since being national champions for sure. I don't think they come into this season in the top 25 coaches poll, but it's a historic program, and it's an ACC school, so I mean you're playing the best of the best. Their schedule is slated with some big time opponents. ACC play, like I said, so I'm definitely planning on following them. The thing about Syracuse is there's so many people who are doing what I want to do there. Who go there to cover sports. So, it's going to take me a while to, work my way up to big programs like men's soccer. But, being a soccer lover myself, a soccer fan my whole life, a soccer player my whole life, I really aspire to get up to covering the men's program as soon as I can, really. And I'm going to work towards that, whether that's writing, covering them for the daily newspaper, doing write-ups for their game, serving as a beat writer, a beat reporter, which they have for their TV outlets, reporting on games. And I mean, even the highest shots aiming up to be a play-by-play broadcaster for them, which is, pretty much reserved for the top seniors who are pretty much certainly going into this field. But it's something, that I want to get there. And I'm going to push to get there. And I'm excited to, kind of aim for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Um, Now you have. There's probably a lot of people trying to find a connection to Burlington, Vermont at this particular time. But your girlfriend is actually going to be playing for the University of Vermont women's team. Like like we talked about, I personally was never fortunate enough to coach her, but we were at the same club for a brief period of time. I know several coaches that had coached her. I've probably seen her play. I don't know. I think I've maybe saw her play maybe like a dozen times. In high school and club. Out, absolutely outstanding player. Right, came through as really high level goalkeeper, high level field player as well, which is pretty rare. She kind of kept both those doors open, into her early high school career, which is also pretty rare. So, can you talk a little bit about, your excitement to kind of see, she's going to be playing on Virtue Field in a week or two, and there's been quite a bit of success on that field in the last year or so.
I was talking to her the other day, and I said, I think this is such an amazing opportunity. I'm so excited to see how this unfolds. The fact that she's going to a program at UVM where the men's national champions were just last year, and Vermont Green obviously just coming home as USL 2 champions. People are calling Vermont a soccer state. They're calling it the soccer state, some people in the United States. There's just so much potential for that program there. And, I could talk about so many things. Vermont Green, their women's team, who is potentially considering the possibility of expanding to a full season women's team. So there's a possibility for Vermont soccer adapting a professional women's team. I know the Blazing Musket reported it a few weeks, but the possibility that Vermont Green is considering building their own soccer specific stadium, are the university teams going to be able to play there? These are all questions that can really expand just Vermont soccer, take it to the next level. And, when I hear people talk about Vermont in the media nowadays, especially after Vermont Green wins the national championship, it's just really exciting. And I do feel there's so much potential up there in Virtue Field in Burlington. And I'm really excited to see how it unfolds. I'm excited myself to go there. I'm at Syracuse, I'm far away, but I gotta find a way to make it up there for at least a couple games. I really want to see the men play. I've heard that their season tickets are going through the roof in the recent weeks. They're selling out because this is a experience that everybody wants to be a part of nowadays. And the last thing I will say on this is it's almost like the community is coming together over soccer there. And that's something that we don't see in a lot of places. And it can only really happen in a few markets because, I mean, look at New England. You can't have a community come together over soccer in New England when you have four other professional sports teams, right? But in Burlington, there's a real opportunity for that. And with such success, um, I really think that the game is going to exponentially grow up there. And I'm excited to see it unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great time to be headed up there to to go to college. Certainly, it's a great opportunity that that she's going to be able to she's going to be able to continue to play soccer at a high level. I mean, there's when we first started going up there, we go up there 2-3 times a year. We used to just go up there for the beer in the lake. So and then we just kind of found out that there's actually a lot of good soccer up here as well. So yeah, so it'll be great. We're hoping to get up there at least once for a women's game, and of course, hopefully, be able to see her play. Like I said, really enjoyed watching her play when she was a youth player. So yeah, so hopefully get that opportunity again. Now, so speaking of the bright point of soccer in New England, we must now briefly touch on the possibly the lowest point of soccer in this great collection of 5.5 or 6 states, the New England Revolution. You are a fan of this team, as many of us are, and as many of us now. Look, so you're 17, 18 years old, right? So you're still relatively young. Some people have been fans of this team for 30 years and not seen a ton of success in those 30 years. So what has your experience been so far? And do you find yourself kind of saying, like, am I really going to commit to this? Am I really going to stick with this team, considering now that, look, you're going to be out in Syracuse, your girlfriend's going to be up in Vermont. There's a professional team in Rhode Island. There's one in Connecticut. There could be two in Connecticut next year. There's one in Portland, Maine. And you've seen for yourself that USL League 2 is an entertaining level of play, as is Division 1. So do you find yourself struggling to still watch this team play as you do every single time that they play?
It's a good question. I grew up a Revolution fan. When I was a kid, it was just, the local soccer team. You support them, you watch their games, you go to a few games. It's really fun. It's a good time. I start to grow up and I see them win the Supporters Shield just a few years ago, and that's a pretty awesome moment for me.
Yep.
And then, of course, I remember them crashing out of the playoffs to New York City, and I was pretty frustrated at that game. And then, ever since then, that's kind of the timeline where I've really started to pay attention to professional sports, and my sports media background has started to build up. So I've really been paying attention to the team this last couple years, and I'm not gonna lie, it's they've been hard to follow. Um, there's times where I can't get myself to watch the game. I am a Manchester United supporter in the English Premier League, and I watch every one of their games. I don't fail to do that. I can't say the same about the New England Revolution sometimes. Um, I don't feel a hometown connection to them as strong as I probably should. And, I really think that that's probably because, there's a lot of factors, obviously. I mean, the ownership is probably a big one. It's hard when you got the Crafts owning the team, and it's pretty clear that they're passive owners. They don't really care too much about this team. Um, the performances as of late have been difficult. At the time of recording, I'm struggling to understand why we haven't fired Caleb Porter.
Oh, well, yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah, it's puzzling to me. I feel like one of the biggest things about this season is that to me, um, I was really excited in the offseason when we brought in all these players. And to be honest, we made huge changes. The roster is completely different. Nothing like it was last year. And it feels like the exact same year this year. And I'm really struggling to figure out how that's possible. I will say I'm excited about Matt Turner coming back. He's my childhood goalkeeper icon. So I'm thrilled about that, but like everyone else is saying, that's not what the team needs right now. I mean, we don't need a goalkeeper. We're struggling to put the ball in the net. So, yes, it's great that Matt Turner is coming back. I'm excited to see him. I'm going to see him soon. But it's not what the team needs, and I think that kind of um, highlights, everything that's kind of going wrong. We're not doing what the team needs to be successful, and I think personally, I'm sure it's an opinion that's shared among many other supporters. We will not make progress until we move the stadium into Boston and we get a fan base that's built around the city. Um, it's just not working out at Gillette, and it's not working out with the Crafts. There's a lot of issues. Um, so that's my take. Will I continue supporting the team? Yes, I will continue following them. I don't know how long that'll go on. I genuinely am not sure. Kind of depends on what happens in these next couple of years.
Yeah, the first point you made is actually really interesting. Uh, about the where it doesn't feel like the local team, which is
Yes.
interesting because look, I grew up a Red Sox fan, and so I started watching them and was aware of what I was watching in like say 1990, 1991, right? So I only had to suffer until 2004 for the team to win the World Series, break the curse, the 86 years, blah 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 blah. But I knew the history of the team, right? I knew what happened in, they sold Babe Ruth. I knew what happened in 46. I knew what happened in 67. I knew what happened in 86, 78. And then I had my own personal experience of hell in 2003, right? But I felt a connection to that. Like it felt like the local team to me, like Fenway Park. Even when I go there now, like Fenway Park feels like home. And I never lived in Boston. I wasn't born in Boston. I lived in Waltham until I was 5. I grew up in New Hampshire, which is for sure is not Boston. It's also not Massachusetts or Vermont. Uh, but I always felt somehow, some way, a really strong connection to the team. And what Major League Soccer has been hoping and saying for 30 years now is that someone your age, right? This league's been around for 30 years. So you're old enough and your parents are older. Like your parents could have been fans of this team and you've grown up where the entire time you've been alive, there's been a team called the New England Revolution that plays not very far from where you live, and they play the favorite sport that you like to watch and play. But yet here you are, right, 18 years old, and you're the target fan that MLS needs and the Revs need to thrive for the next 20, 30 years. But you're 18 years old. This is where they want you to be like, yeah, oh yeah, I can't wait to come home every summer from Syracuse. If I stick around this area after I graduate, I'm gonna buy season tickets. Like they need the Ben Clements of the world and all the other people your age to like really feel a connection with this team, but you don't feel a connection with the team.
Yeah, and you know what I think is one of the big problems that I've always seen a problem with, and this isn't just the Revolution, this is the league MLS in general. As much as I love watching the games on Apple TV every week, and I know the it's a really high quality stream, I really disagree with the decision by the league to go to an all streaming platform, a subscriber based platform. And I think of it like this. The NFL is so much bigger than the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
And if for those who know football, the XFL is a smaller league. It's not followed like the NFL in any way. Just like the MLS is not followed like NFL, MLB. Imagine if the XFL went to a streaming platform where you had to pay everybody who wanted to watch an XFL game had to pay to watch the game. Do you think that's going to work? Probably not, because people don't know about this league for one, and now you want them to pay to watch the games. It's not a popular league. Now they will have to pay to watch the games. That's just not how it works. I mean, so if we're trying to grow the MLS in America, why are we making it a platform where people have to pay to watch? I don't understand that because there's a reason why none of the other four sports have done it in this country, and they're so much bigger than the MLS. And I want that. I want to see the MLS succeed. I want to see it grow. And I just don't agree with the decision to go to Apple TV. I listen to sports radio, and this is the number one thing they say. They say if it's not available to common people aren't going to watch. Non-MLS fans aren't going to watch the MLS. Whereas, I don't know, people who don't love the NFL can still turn on their TV and watch the NFL any Sunday that they want. And the league's not going to grow like this. And like at a time where exciting players are coming to the league, it's a chance for the league to grow. We're making it more difficult when it doesn't need to be like this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because you can't stumble onto a Revolution game on a Saturday night in the summer. Maybe the Red Sox play in the afternoon. Maybe you don't have any plans that night. You can't stumble onto a Revs game. You have to know that the Revs are playing, what time they're playing, and then you have to go to that app. Right? If you're kind of into soccer but not really into soccer, and you have even if you don't have traditional cable, like if you have like we have YouTube TV. If I scroll through YouTube TV on a Saturday night that the Revs aren't playing, I'm more likely to stumble across a Liga MX's game than I am an MLS game. So if I'm going to throw,
Exactly.
so if I'm going to throw a random game on, I'm going to throw on a random game from Mexico because I'm not going to stumble across a random MLS game. And then if you look at like the USL, the USL is they are trying to basically be everywhere that MLS isn't for that same reason, to try and pick up like those casual, those casual fans. Because I mean, look, I was a casual motorsports fan until 4 years ago, and now I watch it all the time, and my wife thinks I have a problem. So like, but again, it was always around. I could be scrolling through, the channels on a Sunday morning, and all right, the F1 race is on, right? And now I watch every single F1 race religiously. I think that's a good point. Now, having seen what has happened with the Portland Hearts of Pine, Rhode Island FC, and Hartford Athletic, there's a lot of people that think that these teams are not good for the Revs because they are, and Vermont Green as well. They are local. They are on, they're on Nesson. They're easily accessible on ESPN Plus, which is cheap, and a lot of people have it, or they get it with Disney or whatever. You can get tickets to there. You can go to any Hartford game. You can go to any Hartford game you want. You can decide at 6:30 you're going down to the Hartford game. So are you hoping to see more of that continue to crop up if the New England MLS representative continues to be the thing that they are?
Personally, I love this New England soccer. I really do. Um, and I think it was fine with just the revolution, but just the fact that we have these new markets engaging in the sport, and not just that, but they're really exciting environments. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm a crazy follower of the Portland Hearts of Pine, but I know they've had some really awesome nights up at Fitzgerald Stadium, some really awesome wins. One of them just recently in their first international friendly. I wanted to go to that game. I look at the tickets, it's a sellout.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't get into these games. The stadium's sold out. It's a really awesome atmosphere. You look at El Clamico between Rhode Island FC, Hartford. People are starting to get like legit excited about this rivalry in New England. Rhode Island with their new stadium, they're hosting these games. These are exciting games. These are hot tickets. They're not cheap. You can actually. I looked at this because I'm going to a Revs game soon. You can for a Saturday night, you can get a Revs ticket for cheaper than you can get a Rhode Island FC ticket, and it's not particularly close. So, I mean, I love what's happening in New England soccer right now. I love these rivalries. I love these small market teams. Portland Hearts of Pine. I love Vermont Green. I think it's really good for the game, and I think if the game is going to grow in this country, it's going to grow in this region. And if we want to make soccer a bigger thing in this region, why not have these markets kind of exploding like they are right now? I think it's great. I'm sure the Revolution don't like it, especially in their current state. But you know what? It's good for the game, and I'm a fan of the game.
yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of been the theme. The roundtable every month, and most of the guests that we've had on, that are in the area, and obviously Sam, Seth, all the guys at Blazing Musket, they love it. Like you said, every Saturday you've got two, maybe even three different games to choose from, depending on where you live that you want to go to. And yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we're ref season ticket holders, and we really have to make a point not to look at any of the ticket selling apps on a Saturday because we don't want to look and say, oh, we could buy the two seats next to us for $25 less than we paid for our discounted season tickets. Like these are already supposed to be discounted, but apparently if you just wait till the day of the game, it's discounted even more. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, for sure. Now I will say this: the one myself and the Blazing Musket together, the one aspect of soccer that we definitely overlook here in New England is college soccer. I will admit that I go to maybe two, maybe three local D1 games a year. We don't really have any coverage of it on the Blazing Musket. I mean, we cover more than anybody else covers around here. But what do you think people might be missing out on? And if the Revs are headed where we think they're all headed, when these D1 teams start playing in a couple weeks' time, if the Revs are officially out of the playoff race, what are people possibly missing out on if they don't get around to some D1 games this fall?
Well, let me tell you something, Thomas. D1 soccer in New England is one of the best places in the whole country to experience it. You just look at, for starters, Vermont, UVM, who just won the national championship. Coming into this 2025 season, two of the top 10 teams in the coaches poll are from the New England area. You got number one ranked University of Vermont, and then the University of Massachusetts Amherst is ranked number 8. So that's just a small example, but there's a lot of really good teams in this area. I mentioned Vermont, obviously, national champions. You go a little bit farther down, you got UNH, who has been making some strong playoff runs. They were ranked highly last year, runners up in the American East Conference, only to Vermont. And, they played them to a battle when they faced. I think they actually might have beat them in the regular season. So they're a really strong program. And there's some good teams in Boston, too, most notably probably Boston University, who are, I believe, back-to-back Patriot League champions. They've had some really good campaigns as of late. They played a great stadium, Nickerson Field. There's other teams in Boston College, not as successful in the ACC, but still a top program. You move a little bit farther away, you got Providence College, that's always a strong program. UConn, historically very strong, not as strong as of late, but historically very up to the level. And then I mentioned UMass Amherst coming in at 8th this year. They made a huge run in the playoffs, the state tournament or the nationwide tournament last year. That's a program that is definitely growing, and the fact that they're top 10 this year coming into the season, that's really exciting. So, there's a lot of great places to go see a game. It's big in Boston, and there's some good stadiums. I don't know the name of it, but the Boston College Stadium I've been there multiple times. It's a great stadium to go see a game. It's really cool atmosphere. I mentioned Nickerson Field in Boston. That's a really old timey feel. Providence, they play at a stadium where the Revolution actually played this
The cup
past year
game.
in USF Open Cup game.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's a cool little stadium, and it's got like that old timey, maybe England League One feel. It's really cool in the middle of the neighborhood. So there's a lot of good places, not only to see a good game, but to see good teams play. I'll give the example of 2 summers ago. I'm thinking about schools that I'm going to, and I went to a Boston University game while I was touring, and it was their first game of the season. They're playing U Albany, and there's not a lot of people there, but I will forever remember this game because it was just a great 90 minutes of soccer. The Terriers go down 1-0. They come back to win 2-1, a last-minute free kick goal, and those people who were there, like me, it was a great atmosphere. They walked it off. It was really cool. So, bottom line is college soccer in this region is very underlooked. And I didn't even go into D3 because I know D3 is not nationally recognized, but the NESCAC, very strong conference. There's some really good teams, especially if you go up north. There's some really good teams. I know Middlebury and Vermont, they're always competing for a national title. So, not even that, you look at players who have come up. You got in the MLS, Julian Gressel. He played for Providence. Patrick Ajimang, the striker, U.S. men's national team. Some of us like, some of us don't. But he started at a D3 in Connecticut, and then he moved to URI. So he's from the region. You got people who play at Vermont Green, who move up. You got Boston University goalie from a few years ago, Francisco Montali. He plays at Vermont Green for a season, has a fantastic year after playing for BU, and now he's up playing with MLS Next Pro over in San Jose. Has made a few first team rosters. Vermont sends people all the time. Sydney Wathua was a member of Vermont's team very recently. Now he's just got his first call up to the Colorado Rapids last week. So look, a lot of talent, a lot of great places to see a game. New England is becoming a hub for college soccer, and I think people really should take advantage of it, and I would love to see it covered more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's been again, like I said, this past year has been it's been great. We had an opportunity to go we haven't got up to Portland, Maine yet. That's in September. We're hoping to get because, like you said, I mean, it's crazy. Like you you really have to like work diligently to get tickets to go to some of these games. The Vermont Green game, the final sold out. I think it basically sold out instantly. They said they had like
It was like seconds.
yeah, they had like 10,000 people like in the queue the moment they opened, and it's like, well, we're only selling 2,700 tickets. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's crazy. But the college soccer, I mean, I think for the most part, I don't think I've ever actually the UVM game we had to pay to get in there, but I don't remember having to pay it to like. I've been to the BC Stadium a couple times, and again, it's a technically Rhode Island has the only soccer specific stadium, but they do pretty much only play soccer at that stadium. So I think that
That's true.
I think that one qualifies, but I don't want to get into a I want to get into a war with people from Rhode Island there. But yeah, but look, I mean, there's just so much to cover. So what do you what do you kind of see yourself doing? Obviously you're gonna have the first year at Syracuse. When you come back next summer, are you going to be looking to carry on as the play-by-play with the Boston Bolts? Are there other opportunities that you might explore? If you could kind of leap ahead to a year from now, where are you hoping to be with your career?
Yeah, so I'm excited about the experiences I'm going to get at Syracuse. Freshman year is different from all the other years, as in it's going to be harder to get some of the on-air stuff. It's going to be a lot more behind the scenes, is what I anticipate. But I'm going to do a lot of stuff there. And then when I come back for the summer, I think I'm really going to be ready to really do some more play-by-play because I probably won't have done it for a while unless things open up there at Syracuse. So yeah, I loved covering USL 2 this season, and I fully intend to do it again next summer. I'd love to be a play-by-play broadcaster again, whether that's with the Boston Bolts, who I did it with this year, whether that's with the Western Mass Pioneers, who I went up and did a game with. I did their playoff game as a color analyst. And I'll tell you, that's a really nice atmosphere up there in Ludlow, Lusitano Stadium. Really cool stadium. So whether it's there, whether it's somewhere else, I definitely think that it's a great opportunity in this region to do soccer play-by-play. Not a lot of people know about it, and it's a great opportunity to kind of, boost the sport and get some reps in at the same time. I'm also considering, depending on what happens, an internship with a baseball team as a play-by-play announcer because what you will hear from the industry is that the way to go big is you want to do summer internships with baseball teams. There's so many baseball teams that people and leagues that people don't realize about, especially in this region. You got the Cape Cod League, which I'm sure you've heard of maybe, but there's a bunch of other leagues that are much lesser known, but great opportunities and really good D1 caliber talent. So that's something I'm definitely considering. But I would love to stay in soccer, and I will stay in soccer because this is the sport that I know. This is a sport that I really enjoy covering. I really know how to do play-by-play for. I really like it. And I really do think I will be covering it next summer.
Yeah, no, that's great. We definitely look forward to it and seeing where you end up. Will you be able to maintain any of a writing presence with the Blazing Musket? I think I still technically am a writer for the Blazing Musket, even though I haven't written anything in 3 months. So Sam's got a pretty open door policy, but do you think you'll be able to kind of keep anything coming? Again, like I said, your coverage of League Two was great and was far more in depth than I've seen of anything else. Covering that league. So what might you be able to contribute to the Blazing Musket?
Yeah, I definitely hope to continue. I think it's important to cover the niche things, like you said, League Two. Journalism today, one of the keys is just focusing in on areas that aren't covered and that you can really bring the story to life when no one else is covering it. And that is certainly the story for USL League 2. And I think that's what I really enjoyed doing this summer is just diving into these games that, aren't covered well. And I want my voice to be the one leading the way, putting the light on these players, who they are, how the games are going. So I hope to do that in USL 2, and I think there's definitely an opportunity for me to do that in the D1 college game as well. Like I said, you wouldn't know anything about D1 college soccer in New England unless you like really looked for it. And whereas like you can find stuff about college football and college basketball, and not necessarily in this region because it's smaller, but since soccer is growing in college in this area, I think it's time that it starts getting covered more. And that's something I would really like to bring to the Blazing Musket because, like you said, I haven't seen college soccer coverage. So, with the national champs in our region, I think it's important to focus in on this region with UMass Amherst, who's in the top 10. These are schools that they deserve to have their story told. And there's a market for it, right? I mean, we saw how many people bonded together over University of Vermont winning that national title. There's a market of people who are interested about this. You just got to find them. So I would love to find that market of people who are interested in college soccer and tune it to them. I think it's something that I definitely could do and something I hope to do.
Well, I tell you what, me and you'll have a little chat with Sam, and we'll get this we'll get this whole thing straightened out. Ben, really appreciate you coming on the show. Great opportunity to talk to you, and this is your first podcast appearance, so if you go on to be successful and very well known, I can try and take some of the credit. But where are you on social media? Have you?
Yeah.
I know people of your age are on many different platforms, but where might people be able to find you?
Yeah, so I do have a broadcast Instagram where I post a bunch of stuff that I make, whether it be edits, I post links to any game that I'm doing live play-by-play for. Just a bunch of stuff. You'll see it. You can follow me at BXC_broadcasts on Instagram, and that's a great way to follow everything that I'm doing. I also write on Substack for the Blazing Musket, so you can find my link in my profile there. Yeah, that's pretty much the where you can find everything for me online at the moment.
Awesome. All right. Well, Ben, we will definitely have you back. On a regular basis until you move on to bigger and better things at some point. But thanks again for coming on, and yeah, good luck in Syracuse this fall.
Thanks so much, Thomas. Appreciate it.